You're
And
great
it's
with that.
it's the top of the hour, so please say you're okay with recording unless you have, and if you don't want your faces to show, now's the time to stop your video. But please don't do that. And please feel like you can either leave your video on or off. We love seeing your bright and shining faces. Good morning to those of you in Central Time. Good morning to those of you who are calling us from Oregon today. And good afternoon to those of us in Eastern Time, because it is lunchtime and it's time for lunch and learn and listen. And so glad you're here. Morning, afternoon, Joel. Joel's in Eastern Time. And hello, Susan Briette, wherever you are. I've said hi to David Crowley and the others. Um, so glad you're here, Brian and Andrew. Our guests today from Genesis Mediation. I need to apologize to the person who emailed me and said, I'm so sorry that I can't come and be part of Lunch and Learn today. I really need to learn more about meditation. Um, and and I wrote back and I said, oh, well, there are lots of good things that come from mediation, and and go to their website because it's all about the waves of calm and peace. So meditation, mediation, what have you.
We're
We are going
well,
to talk about mediation today, and Brian and Andrew know that the Presbytery of Wabash Valley has had a long-standing relationship with Lombard Mennonite Peace Center and has a pod of presbyters. I like that. If there was a T-shirt, we'd have a pod of presbyters instead of a swarm or a herd. We have a pot of presbyters who've been trained to be Lombard mediators. Some of them have moved on to other presbyteries, and some remain with us. But it's always really good to have lots of tools in one's toolbox. And I was pretty excited when a former member of Wabash Valley Presbytery made the connection between Brian and me some months ago, and Brian made the connection with Andrew, and here we are today to talk about the benefits of mediation, the challenges, what a place like Genesis can do for and with individuals, um, people in groups, people in pairs, um, congregations, presbyteries, the universe, infinity and beyond. Um, we're really glad you're here, and we really thank you for taking time out of your morning. I hope this didn't require you to switch too many things up, and that you didn't miss any coffee coming to us from the Portland area. We're super glad that you're here with us. Let's begin with a word of prayer, and then I'm going to turn it over to the two of you to enlighten, inspire, encourage, and engage us however you wish on the subject of mediation. Okay, let's pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for all the beauty of this day and all the ways in which you invite us into conversation and collaboration and communication. We are grateful for people who can help us to sharpen our tools as well as our focus on what it means to be people of peace and reconciliation. We ask all of this in the life-giving name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All righty. Brian and Andrew, thank you again for being with us.
well, what a lovely introduction.
Yeah, thank you. And we've had a chance to chat with Michelle. I think we've met you previously. Great to see your face. We'd love to hear from the others here, like if you could just give a brief introduction so we know where you're coming from and stuff, because we've not met you before and it's a privilege to do so. So if you want to just unmute and let us know who you are, where you are, what your experience is in your own settings.
Yeah, I'll
Hi,
start.
oh,
Oh, no, David's going to start. Sorry.
hi, my name's David. I'm the chaplain at Peabody Retirement Community. I think 30 years ago, before our presenters were born, I did mediation training at Lombard, and I'm just thrilled that Jennifer is giving us this opportunity.
You're muted, Jennifer. You're
Hey,
muted.
Thanks, David. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if you would have beat Brian though on the born thing. You might have me. I was born in 75, so if you were training in the 70s, you nailed that one.
Yeah, I'm probably
No comment from
closer to
David.
your
There you
age.
go.
Yeah, David. Yeah, it was whatever. Joel, where are you? Thanks, David. Where are you from, Joel?
Yeah, so I'm also from the Best Coast, San Francisco Bay Area, but currently I'm serving a church in South Bend, Indiana, after a stint in what Texans call God's country, which surprised Texas. I don't have a lot of background in like formal mediation, except when I was in 7th and 8th grade and I was a conflict manager in my middle school, which is a story of its own for another time.
Joel, we're gonna have to call on you for assistance in the Wabash
He's in.
Valley.
He's in.
If you got any middle
It's
schoolers who have
love.
conflicts, that's my sweet spot. I'm good with
I
that.
love it. That's brilliant.
Landed that in middle school, you're in.
Way ahead of us. Yeah.
Well, my name's Susan Berea, and I've had a lot of experience as a member of a congregation, and little growing in terms of pastoring. But I just think that mediation is a really underused, often too late, but really, really important tool that we really need to learn more about.
Yeah. Oh, you're Vicky.
I'm Vicki. I'm
Hey.
the Administrative Director for the Presbytery of Wabash Valley, and welcome. We're looking forward to hearing how you can help us mediate.
Michelle.
I'm Michelle, and I am at a church in Rensselaer, Indiana, small town, in the northwest quadrant of Indiana. And I think the extent of my mediation training would be the previous conversation we all had.
Okay,
So
there
good
you
job.
go. There you go. Well, thanks again for your invitation. I don't know if you could give Andrew the ability to share his screen. Some Vicky.
Done. You've got it.
Okay, great. All right.
Yay.
Super.
All right. Well,
Okay. Andrew, I'll let you run with that.
yeah.
Well, and just to give you an introduction, I'm clergy in the United Methodist denomination, pastored for 33 years, and transitioned to mediation and pastoral counseling in 2020 at the beck and call of Jesus. Maybe it was more of a swift kick, but anyway, moved out of the church into this, and maybe I'm getting my, Joel, I'm going back and getting my junior high mediation skills upgraded in this journey.
Can all of you see what's going on?
Yep, it's good.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Okay, I just need to move that to the top. There we go. All right. Well, as introduced, we're with Genesis Christian Mediation. Let's see here. How can I move this slide and zoom? There we go. This is a little bit about our group and kind of what we do. Mediation is typically associated with divorce or small claims court. Lots of negative things. People generally think if they go to mediation, it's a bad thing, right? Well, mediation, as you know, is a little bit more than that. We work with groups, families, individuals, whatever, and we usually attempt to build more of a collaborative group in any of those settings, whether it's working in a church sense, working with the denomination, with with other professionals to help them grow, or family sense with counselors, spiritual directors, things like that. Because all the data says the more areas that we can surround a family or a couple or a church or a group with of care, the higher the percentages are that reconciliation and growth can happen. So today we're gonna dabble in a couple things. The first one is really kind of finding the heart of a mediator as a leader. We're gonna hit a couple aspects there, and then briefly look in at a key aspect within the realm of the science of communication. So here we go, finding the heart of a mediator as a leader. We have a whole list of qualifications and characteristics that we typically go into it. And really today, we're going to look at two of them. What does it mean to have a heart of peace? And what does it mean to listen well? Because we think these two things are super foundational when you're in the role of clergy and you're trying to, you're weathering the storms of conflict. People are coming to you, maybe in your congregation, maybe other fellow clergy members, and things are going on, and really just getting a good foundation, setting up yourself with a good foundation to be able to receive what they're bringing is so critical, even before you get out of the gates in trying to help make peace in those moments.
And when Andrew says we're gonna look at those, we're just gonna touch on those two areas because we don't have much time and there's too much to say, and we don't want to fill this with too many words. And so, just so you know, we're not going to go all the way through either of those.
You mean we're not going to be certified at the end of this hour?
No, wouldn't that be great? But I think the six of us could probably talk about each of these things for a full day if we wanted to. All right, so to kick it off, looking at this one aspect of the science behind communication, there's lots of things out there. You can Google much of these things, but we're going to take a look at some numbers that kind of demonstrate the effectiveness or lack thereof of how humans are set up to communicate. Over there on the left, you're going to see three numbers: 150, 400, 900. These are all words per minute that represent three things: our ability and how fast we talk, our ability and how fast we listen, and our ability and how fast we think. Any guesses on what you think, how fast we speak? Which number represents how fast we speak?
When I'm preaching and trying to jam it in, 900 words easy.
That's brilliant, David.
So we have a vote for 900, in jest or not.
Joel had a thought, and then he got missed out on hearing you.
I would guess 150.
Yes, that is true. And that's an average. But why we like to throw it up there is because some study using very big brothery methods, listening to YouTube tapes, tapping phone calls, I don't know. It was published in the Oregonian Live that Portland is the fastest speaking city in the country. And we average about 150 words per minute. Elsewhere, it's a range from about 100 to 150, but auctioneers speak around 200 words per minute, just to give you an idea how fast they're going at.
And if you're in the Southeast, probably close to 80 words a minute in some areas.
Yeah. So from that, any guesses at how fast you listen? That would be 400 words per minute. We can listen at almost 3 times the rate we speak. And with only one number left, 900 words per minute. That is how fast the average person thinks in a words per minute. And they've
Except for
studied-
David, who actually speaks at that level when
Yeah,
he's trying to
except for
cram it
David.
in.
Right. Which means he probably thinks twice that at 8
Exactly right.
avant geniuses that does that. And I've actually met people who probably think it closer to 1,600 words per minute. But that's a range. It can go up to 1,800 is the fastest that they've mapped out anyways. So I hope
Michelle,
you
did
the same.
it look
Oh,
like Michelle had a comment or a thought? Did you, Michelle? You're muted.
I did, but I forgot it.
That's
it couldn't
how
have been that
fast-
important.
that's a picture of how fast we think, right? Just like
in and gone. Well, I hope you come to the same conclusion that we have, and that is communication is screwed. Just looking at these numbers, the mathematical probability in the first minute of conversation, if you're talking about moderately complex things, that you're actually going to communicate what you intend to in the first minute is around 10 to 12%. And also, according to Google, the average person wants and seeks to respond in a conversation within the first 2 minutes. So if you follow the mathematical probabilities, that means that by the time people typically respond, there is a 25 to 30% chance that they've actually heard what the speaker's intending for them to hear. This is just according to the science of how communication works. Any thoughts, comments? Yes, Michelle.
Well, I do have thoughts and I assume you're going to help us think through how we might do that better. That's discouraging isn't right the word. It's startling to me to hear that. That I would hear an average of 25 to 30% of what somebody's saying to me. And that's startling and not quite discouraging, but sobering. That's the word.
Yeah.
On account of I'm a pastor. And it seems to be a big part of the job.
Right. The general hope is that when we see this number, that it becomes compelling, that it compels us to resist our urge to respond as if we normally would, but to caution us to listen longer, even if it feels so weird for us to do that, but to listen longer than we initially intend.
One other question, this is measured in words, right? Is there science about how we read each other's tone or body language in communication, since that's part of it as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's tons of that. Yeah.
There's tons of data on listening and just how we take in, how much nonverbal stuff we assimilate or listen to before we grab, how much meaning we infer from that, all kinds of data.
Well, and the 900 words a minute thinking, right? That means you're taking in data from all those other points, like facial expressions and body language and movement and all that is being processed like non-verbally on the inside of you while you're thinking and you're listening. And so, yeah, I think the biggest issue is assumption that jumps in really fast. That facial expression means they're mad. And so we assume that they're mad. And that assumption can actually fuel an argument where it doesn't need to exist at all. And if we can catch ourselves on that, it's so helpful. One of the couples I'm working with, The man went to the fridge and opened the fridge and sighed when he opened the fridge. The wife took it offensively and said, "What's the matter? Don't I have enough food in the fridge?" And that was not what the sigh was about at all. It was just a sigh, right? But she took it offensively and it started an argument, which didn't need to happen, right? But it was the thought thing that happened, right? It was a thought that assumed by a body, not by communication of words, just by a sigh, that something was going on that wasn't going on. And how often does that happen?
Yeah. So how many of you have heard the term active listening? Pretty much everybody. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
sir.
So a big 90s thing, if you spent any time in corporate America, you went to seminars and trainings on it and things of that. And that was really set up with the idea that in any given conversation, not presentations or classroom setting, but any given conversation between a person or within a smaller group, that the speaker is the center, the most important aspect. It's everything revolved around the speaker. Well, new and modern listening thought, especially one of the guys, and we're going to throw a quote up here from an Oscar Trimble. He's an Australian that's on the forefront of modern listening application. He actually says that it's not the listener's job to make sense of what the speaker's saying. The listener's job is to help the speaker make sense of what they're saying. Completely different paradigm. I'll read that again. It's not the listener's job to make sense of what the speaker's saying. The listener's job is to help the speaker make sense of what they are saying. And so the whole idea here in how we as a mediation group look at communication is that as a listener, it's our job to help unlock the true meaning, intent, understand everything that someone's trying to convey us when they're talking. And we seek to help others be able to practice those skills to do the same as a listener. It's incredible to be in a room with a group of people or a family or in a marriage relationship and see someone transform in their listening skills and what that means for that relationship going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts, comments, reactions to this? This is a different paradigm than what we've probably grown up in school, family system, been taught.
Yeah, one thing for this, as far as like I too am a pastor, like Michelle mentioned earlier, and wanting to know like how much of what I'm saying from the pulpit just kind of whoosh, going through. And I've noticed like there have been a couple of times in the last few months where I've been able to lean more into something I was going to say because I felt the response, right, of the listeners, of the congregation in the space. And they were able to help me identify that maybe this smaller sub point of something I was saying was actually really important and needed to be underlined a few more times because of their response. And that's sort of my like serious reflection. My more kind of goofy reflection is I remember when I was smaller, I would sometimes talk and end with, "I don't know what I'm talking about, mommy," talking to my mom. And I think she would have to make sense of what I was saying. And I feel that way sometimes with my kids too now, where like, okay, I kind of know where you're going with this. And there's an opportunity for the parent to help make sense of what the kid's saying there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an interesting comment about your pulpit work, because I think that this really does ask a question about what happens. How do we communicate effectively from the pulpit? In preaching ministry, that's a whole other topic for us, right? But I think that part of that is asking a question, not necessarily even for a response sometimes, but asking questions in what you're saying in order to cause people to think along a direction that they may not have thought, that may cause them to go into, help them process some of what you're saying. In my own processing, my own style, I do all questions. So I'm a little different. but that's just because that's the way I do it. So I engage in a conversation. So I'm actually hearing what they say. And then we get to build from that, which is a different, I know it's a very different approach, but it's such a fascinating thing. This idea of the listener's job is to help the speaker make sense of what they're saying, which really does. I love how you pull that into the pulpit ministry, even without questions, Joel. That's just powerful to me, that even without them speaking to you, you can sense their involvement and their engagement in what you're saying, and pulls something more out of you than what you thought was there, which is beautiful.
So what does this imply or mean for us when we don't know these conversations come to us, someone's angry about something, or bothered, or wants to come and has an opinion they want to share? What is this different paradigm? How does that shift how we receive or work with that?
Seems to me that it invites the person who's receiving the anger to start to help and have agency, instead of just being the recipient of anger, to ask powerful questions that get to the heart of things. Because in my experience, the anger is a hint, but
Right.
it may not be the presenting concern.
Well, if they have the possibility of presenting 12% of what they're actually thinking in the first minute of what they're saying, a lot of times they may talk more than a minute, right? But you may not get much more, in a very high percentage of what's actually going on for them, without first not taking it personally, and second, like saying questions or observations. Wow, looks like you're feeling really angry about this, is actually an observational statement that can make a difference in what's happening for them, because they know they're angry, but to have somebody observe that can kind of pull them out of that and cause them, what? Oh, wait. And then you have possibility of getting behind the anger. Anger is never the actual emotion. I mean, it's like the presenting emotion, but it usually is the emotion that masks the other emotions they don't want to reveal or talk about, right? The fear or the hurt or the sense of insecurity or not safety, not being safe, whatever those. There's so many things that can be hidden behind the anger, and it's the easiest go-to emotion sometimes for people.
Any other thoughts?
Is that your hand up, Joel? Okay, it looks like a hand up, but that's okay.
Well, I think this is an invitation to make a shift in how you perceive these conversations. Because when someone comes into the room and they're delivering anger, frustration, something is amiss, it's very easy to feel like you are the target. And so automatically the wall, the invisible defense, okay, I have to shield myself from this. This is an invitation to get out of that chair, because they're not necessarily putting you there. They may think they are, but they may not be. And shift along to where you're standing beside them and looking as an observer into the message that they're giving. So it takes the focus off of you and allows you to step into almost a guide, someone who's standing alongside a friend, to hear and like look at this message with them and be able to be in that place with them. So as a listener, and we're going to dive into this a little bit. Oscar Trimboli talks about 4 or 5 different aspects of listening. We throw in listening to the Holy Spirit as people of faith. We're going to jump in and look at what does it mean to listen to yourself from this context of now, okay, so if I'm supposed to help a speaker unlock, really, what's the first step in doing that? So Oscar Trimboli teaches that when you're listening to yourself, there's really a couple questions, and he uses he's a consultant and coach, and so he uses some more corporate language, but we've boiled it down to really the first question being kind of, where's my head at? And that would be things like, what's the context of the moment that I'm standing in? Is my brain, am I still at work or am I at home? And is my head in the place where I'm at? Do I have biases?
And is my body at home, but my head's still at work? Is another problem.
And then where's my mind at? Right? How many different things am I multitasking in the moment? What am I thinking? Right? These are all aspects of where is my brain at? And Brian, do you have any thoughts on any of these three? I'm going to jump in on bias, but if you have something else on.
Well, I think that for us to learn to be aware of where we are is a key to being, to helping in the process of conflict situations that are happening, or any situation actually. We can bring so much weight and baggage into the room that we're carrying with us. And if we're not aware of that, it will be actually communicating through the bags that we're carrying with us sometimes, instead of communicating clearly with the person that's in front of us and actually listening, asking good questions for them. And so I think this first step of where's my head at is so crucial, because I think that sometimes we don't take the time to notice. And if we've rushed out into our day and we're carrying all this stuff, it can be, we can become a battering ram in situations we don't tend to be.
Yeah. Bias is a reference to some of our some more additional neuroscience around how our brains operate with memories and how we store information. You have things like implicit memory, negativity bias, the my side bias, which we'll touch on a little bit later. These are all perceptions and distortions we bring into a conversation based upon our emotions, how long has transpired, our role in a situation. So just being aware of the potential biases that you bring into a conversation is crucial. When we talk about the second question that we generally go to about listening to yourself is, where are my emotions at? And I know we alluded to some things that have emotional implication up top, and that is true, but emotions and head can be completely different aspects of awareness. Things that are associated with emotions would be triggers and trauma. Biases touch on it. Just implicit memory, that's our brain's ability to naturally store information and catalog it by the emotion we felt at the time. And then self-care, huge piece of being able to be emotionally aware.
I think that it's interesting with the idea of where are my emotions at. And the thought I had was brilliant, but it just left, just like those 900 words per minute. So if it comes back and I think it's really important, I'll say it.
Well, thoughts, questions, comments, processings, as we look at this slide about listening to ourselves.
Yeah, Michelle.
I have a question that may be better at the end, so I'll just say it and we can move past it if we need to. I think it would, as a pastor, I personally would be helped by a set of 3 questions I could ask myself in the morning when I'm doing my morning quiet reading, quiet praying, just sitting, because I am so bad at asking those questions. To prompt myself to think about my bias, to think about how I listen to others. So not something huge and complicated, but some basic questions we could ask ourselves in times of quiet to help prep ourselves. But that can wait till the end if that's helpful.
I think that's a great question. And I would actually, so when I work with clients, I actually have them start a 4-question set. They start with where's my head at? Where's my emotions at? Because those 2 questions can lead us to a variety of trails. And I find that getting more specific can take us and get us off. We may miss something, but a pretty big question like where am I right now? Right? Where are my emotions at allows us to be open to seeing what might be going on in there. The 3rd question I go to is where do I think I should be? Because the implications of like that should and self and shame and where do we, where are we supposed to, right? What are we, right? Who do we think we have to be in the moment, right? Allows us to get in touch with that. The 3rd one is where is Christ? Excuse me. 4th one, where's Christ? Where's Christ in me?
I think it's helpful to remember with emotions that they're not always in our heads, and to be aware of the fact that a pain in our body can point to emotion that's actually there. And to ask the question of, what's going on in my body today? Where am I tight? What's hurting? Where am I, where's tension being held in my body? You can actually, I've had conversations with my shoulder that's like just cramped up. It's like, hey, shoulder, what's going on today? Tell me about what you're feeling. And you can have a little conversation with parts of your body sometimes, like, I'm so angry. Like, well, great, good to know. Thanks for telling me. But I just think that being aware of the fact that these emotions live in our whole bodies, they're not in our heads, is really helpful to us to remember, because I think sometimes we have a really interesting mythology that somehow emotions that we feel are just in our heads and not in our bodies. Yet medical science for years has told us they live in our bodies. So
an interesting story. I was just with a couple who are in separation, working towards saving their marriage. And in their session, we talked about, well, how do you notice when your partner, when the conversation is changing for your spouse, or how do you notice when it changes for you? They were so quick to be able to identify physical moments for their spouse when they observed the conversation changing. And they had a hard time noticing when it changed for themselves, but they could name it for when the conversation was changing for their spouse. And interestingly, one of them asked me, like, can we say this? Can we tell each other we notice, like, hey, you're shifting in your seat, or your shoulders are getting tighter. Are you upset right now? And I'm like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you? Right? The body gives clues in conversation when things that maybe we don't have the words for. So this next slide, we're going to take a look at this same thing, but we're going to look at it from what we believe the Bible is inferring or correlating to what it means to listen to yourself. But what's that first step the Bible is talking about? And that is that we believe the Bible asks us our first step in listening is to listen through love. Greatest commandment: love the Lord God with all your heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Love others as you love yourself. So this is where the Holy Spirit comes in. It's the first two-way listening place, right? How we believe this affects the questions we ask. This becomes more of a where am I at? And it brings in heart and mind a little bit, because you're talking about biases and triggers and traumas. Where am I right now? But also this idea of unoffendable. What does it mean to be unoffendable in that moment, listening through love? When you hear the idea or the concept of unoffendable, what does that mean to you? Any thoughts about that word?
I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate the time to talk. I will try to be
All
fair.
right.
It's okay. We give you permission.
Unoffendable. I'm glad to have that word because it's something I've been trying to practice, to realize that something that somebody says, it's kind of a couple things, right? Something that somebody says or does is not about me primarily, but also how I view the whole context, how I understand it and receive it, is that it's resting in divine providence. And it's resting in God, so that it's, I called my mom a couple decades ago about something going on in the church I was working at, and she just listened. She's a pastor as well. And she said, when I was done, but sweetie, you're not Jesus. And you're not the Messiah. And it had a pretty big impact on me to realize that I don't have to master control or understanding of things, or expression of things, that I can let the things that would previously have really offended me just flutter, just be ephemera. Shutting up now.
That's beautiful. It's a good gift when I love that what your mom said, that as you remember it. I've had somebody say that to me before as well when I was young in ministry and was stressing about being put in the middle of a couple's conflict, couple in the church that were having marital conflict, and called a friend to get some advice, another clergy person, and she said, Brian, you are not Jesus. It's like, right. Right. It's good to remember.
Any other thoughts or comments from Joel, David,
Tyler.
Vicky? I think
And
Tyler
Tyler
joined as well.
I think he's still there. Yeah, I
Dan.
think so.
This is David. For me, it's, if you will, putting on the therapist hat. That as much as possible, I'm trying to take all this in, but not being judgmental. But I also feel constrained to say, this is asking a lot right now, where people take being offended as a virtue. And even the way they're approaching a discussion. And that's going to create some interesting imbalances in the conversation when we're not giving back what the person is expecting in matters of offense.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Said.
Yeah, we do live in a time of where offense has become a virtue.
Oh, right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of asking that question, like, where am I at? And then the flip side, where are others at? Just that whole piece of asking those questions of, I think that slows down a conversation just to ask the question, right? Where's this person coming from, possibly? What
Right.
brokenness might be this person expressing? What hurt have they experienced at the supermarket this morning while shopping they're still carrying? What perspective are they carrying with them? How do these questions and this idea expand how you might see love?
I'm still hanging out with that idea of being unoffendable in like a good way. I grew up evangelical, and there were certain questions that you weren't allowed to ask, right? And so asking myself, where am I at? Being willing not to worry about, does this cause offense to God? Does this cause offense to others? And allowing those feelings just to exist before I kind of sort them into like good or heretical sort of moment there. And I think that I found, like, with this, the bottom piece here about where others at, is that I'm much better at noting like the perspective that I can come to with others and permit them to be not Jesus when I can do that for myself.
Mm. Thank you, Joel. And then it caused me to ask, like, is there a reason to take offense on God's behalf, even if somebody's being heretical? Like, is that necessary? Do we need to defend God? Is God able to defend God's self, right? I mean, what is that? What does it mean in that realm?
Right. Well, if it said that listening to the unsaid, which is another piece of listening, is the most important. Listening to yourself is the most overlooked. We rush to meaning and content. Sorry about dog barking at somebody walking by. We rush
hardly hear
to getting to context and meaning and figuring something out and we often forget to listen to what we're bringing into that space, into that conversation.
Mm.
So this next piece of listening and finding the heart of a mediator is this idea of, is your heart at peace or at war? And this is a concept from a wonderful book called The Anatomy of Peace. And it boils down the idea of conflict with others or with ourselves to this very simple concept of at peace or at war. And they say that you're at peace when you simply view the other person as a person, but your heart goes to war immediately when you begin to see them as an object.
And people will do something like, oh, I never view other people as an object. And yet they label them as a liar or as mean-spirited or whatever. And any label objectifies the person, right? So, it can be a minimal thing. But
just
it can be
even
major.
to like, oh, you need to win them to your side, or like you have a disagreement. Well, if they just see it my way, or man, I don't understand why they don't want to repaint the bathroom. Or man, I can't, we've gone to Thai food the last 4 times we've ordered takeout. Why can't we just do Mexican?
Mhm.
Right? It's very subtle things like that when we stop seeing the other person, but we see like a result that we need to get to, or an end goal, or a place, right? It's not just about like a morality statement.
Or an agenda.
Right.
Mhm.
I think for me, it's more helpful to see the person as an end in themselves to be respected and not a means to an end. And that helps me with the idea that I really do listen to Abraham Heschel, and I don't want to see anybody as an object. But it's in switching the word, it shows me how deep that tendency is, even if I come at it with the best of intention.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And here we see a bunch of different things that can cause us to objectify someone. What's not on this list? And there are many things.
I think that like many of these things are bad things. And I know that what's really insidious in my life is when I objectify someone for a good thing and I flatten them into that one thing that they are for me, and thinking about that as being at war that's a helpful framing for me, so that even if it's a good thing, I'm still flattening them and I'm still reducing them to something not an image bearer.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm. Yeah, on that level, it can be simply a role that we attach to them can be objectifying.
Mhm.
Even wife, husband. I have a friend, I always am calling him on, he always talks about his wife, but he never uses her name in conversation, like with me. Just and I've said, stop it. She's a person beyond her role as your wife. And I just think that sometimes we don't even see that we're doing that.
We do the holding a pastor to a higher standard here in church world.
Mhm.
Right. And even that title can become a label that dehumanizes that person and doesn't let them have real life realities, right? And can hinder those relationships.
Any other thoughts from anybody else? So this is where we wanted to touch on my side bias. My side bias is our ability to increasingly see things as we want to see them based upon our own opinions and attitudes. And this is something our brains just normally do. We're all fallible in this. Doesn't matter how intelligent that we are, right? When we have an opinion about it, our brains will selectively grab or place more emphasis on data that supports our opinions and beliefs. And in extreme cases, that's when we can start representing things we agree with as facts, irregardless if they're true or not. The Bible talks to us about hard heart disease, right? And we see this in a lot of places. See it in relationships as couples approach divorce, right? They own their stuff, but they just can't. Well, the other person really needs to change for this to work. Right? I know that I've contributed to the failure of this marriage, but if so-and-so would just own and change this one thing, this would be fine.
Yeah.
We hear it in church conflict too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap up, how did today help you? What did you get from today that could help you keep your heart at peace and see people more in that respectful, as David said, position of seeing them as people, as being able to hear them as people? What stuck out to you the most?
Andrew, why don't you take the screen share off so we can see each other more easily?
Yeah, good call.
Thanks.
I think the taking the self-inventory as the mediator, as the person who wants to navigate toward peace, as a model for that kind of deep listening is so very helpful. You know, just checking where one is helps a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Jennifer. Anybody else?
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things that I got is something that I often say that I believe and I'm committed to, but I'm not sure I practice it, which is listening through love, listening to others through love, listening to myself through love.
Mm,
And that made a really big difference to me. One of the most moving lines of lyric is from Once in David's Royal City, where we sing, then at last our eyes will see him through his own redeeming love. And that to me is, I mean, I get tears in my eyes just saying that, let alone when I sing.
wow. Wow.
So it brought that to mind.
Mm. Mm,
Thanks, Michelle.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a chance to kind of come in and share some tools and resources with you. We really appreciate the invite, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Oh, Andrew, Brian, thank you so much. My hope in inviting you today was to leave people wanting more and to recognize what a powerful and important tool mediation is, and for ourselves as clergy. Today we're a clergy crowd, and how beautiful it is to think about this as a wonderful, wonderful piece of our theological toolbox.
Mhm.
Thank you for
Yeah.
framing it that way and shaping it that way. Gosh, I think it would be very helpful if you wouldn't mind leaving in the chat how folks can get in touch with you. If they'd like,
Absolutely.
you can certainly come through me, but you may not want to, or you may just want to file things away, friends, for another time. But if one of you would do that, there it goes. Brian's on it. And I hope this is the start of many more things that we can do together, because I think that all of us know that understanding how individuals and couples and families work is all about how churches work. It's all
Mhm.
one and the same. And all those people in our lives deserve the best, I think, in terms of deep listening and compassion. Your particular method and expression of this just is laced and tied up with compassion. And
Mhm.
I'm very grateful
Mhm.
to you for being willing to leap across time zones today
It's our
and hang
pleasure.
with us.
It's our privilege. Yeah.
And you've
Anything.
probably been told this 100 zillion times, Brian, but I feel like you're the Sean Hayes of mediation.
Oh, Sean Hayes.
Remember?
Wow.
No, you are his doppelganger, or he yours. I think that's it. I think
Maybe
Sean
the
Hayes
Sean Hayes
is the
doppelganger.
Brian Shimer of comedy or something. But check it out, folks. Thank you
will.
so much,
Thank you.
everyone, for being
Yeah.
with us. Andrew and Brian, I know our paths are going to cross again, and I
Absolutely.
hope you will cross paths with these wonderful people who are
Yeah. Hope to as
folks
well.
I'm sinfully proud of
Mm,
as being members of the Presbytery of Wabash Valley.
thanks
Friends,
so much.
the rest of you who are not going to be leaping too many time zones, maybe just one, may wish to know that we'll be back in April for more fun and learning and joy, and it will likely be after Easter at this point.
That's wise for you.
Yeah, I think you could probably look for us on either the 13th or the 20th of April at topic to be announced. Thank you all so very much. God
Maybe
bless you.
maybe meditation.
Meditation.
I don't know, maybe more mediation. Thank you all. Take good
thank you so
care.
much. All right,
Bye, guys.
Bye now.